How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast with Brendan and Sterling coming at you here on this Wednesday, getting you prepared for your Thursday and Saturday slate of games. Sterling, how you doing today on this Wednesday?
I'm doing pretty rough, man. We got a Chinook rolling through here, so I got woke up with a pretty nasty migraine, but is
I
what it
I
is. Pop
feel
some
you in that
Advil,
department.
right? Yeah,
No,
you know what I mean. So that's okay. Pop some Advil, get through this, and then head to work. At least it's almost Christmas.
yay.
Few days off coming up, so that'll be nice. How about yourself?
Um, yeah, I'm awake. I'm alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one of those days. But we're here trying to get you prepared for football. And before we get into some of our game picks, because again, we only have the three coming up this particular time. We have the Thursday game, and then we have the two Saturdays, as opposed to the three Saturdays. I want to talk about the Eagles real quick and just the absolute meltdown of a season that they've had.
Yeah, it's been bad for them, man. I don't know what's going on. I was watching Good Morning Football, and Peter Schrager said it best. It's like if they only have to gain 1 yard, then they're gonna win the Super Bowl. But it's getting to that goal line that they can't seem to do. They're the best team at gaining 1 yard, and they're one of the worst teams at gaining anything else right now. The offense is just abysmal the last few games.
Well, we talked about this team for so long, and I've said it more than once about the Eagles, is that up until I would say that game against San Francisco, you were looking at this Eagles team and you went, you know what? They're good enough to get the win, but you're also sitting back going, it feels like a fraudulent win. And just going through their entire season, their first game against New England, it was week 1, so no one really had anything figured out. They only won 25 to 20. It's like, okay, New England's not going to be a great team this year. We already knew that coming in. Then going up against Minnesota, it was 34 to 28, so basically just a shootout. And then it was 25 to 11 against Tampa, and then Washington gave them a massive scare, 34 to 31. Their first game that was really a convincing win, I would say, was the 23 to 14 win over the Rams. And then the following week they end up losing to the Jets. And
Yeah.
we're that week they lost to the Jets, it was kind of like, okay. Then they convincingly beat Miami 31 to 17. I think that was probably their most convincing win of the season, where you're like, okay, like this is a team. Struggled
Yeah.
against Washington again. Then they faced off against Dallas. They struggled to beat them. Then they struggled to beat KC. They struggled to beat Buffalo. And then it was San Francisco walking back in and going, well, we're healthy. We're the best team in the NFL. We know we had that 3 game little skid, but that's when we weren't healthy and we just weren't playing up to our potential. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, Philly, we're going to give the recipe to the entire NFL how to beat you. And
Yep.
they did. And now Dallas came back and dominated them, and then they ended up losing a really close game to Seattle. And the thing is, with those one-score games, it's essentially a coin toss. We talked about this last year with the Vikings, where it was like, yeah, they have, I think it was like 12 one-score wins, and
Hmm.
you're sitting back going like, that's not sustainable. Like no one fears that team going into the playoffs, and now that we're seeing Philadelphia kind of crash down back to earth a little bit, you're kind of going like, okay, like yeah, this is without a doubt something. And looking at the Giants this particular week, I'm
Hmm.
not convinced they can beat the Giants. And then they have to go up against the Cardinals, and then they
Yep.
finish off the season against the Giants again. It's like, okay, well, let's see.
Well, exactly. And I mean, this defense was supposed to be one of the best, and they had the lead at the end of the game, and they allowed what was it, a 92 or an 82-yard drive by Drew Lock to
Of all
lose the
people.
game. And it's like it's definitely concerning. I don't think inserting Matt Patricia in there was the right move for them to make. We've seen before Matt Patricia, while he's great at positional planning and helping out a team, he hasn't really been great at play calling, and he was exposed. If you got 2 minute, like the 2 minute drill offense out there, he can't seem to get his defense on the front foot. They were backpedaling the whole way.
Yeah, and I will say Jalen Hurts was coming into or that game, off of a pretty serious illness that he was dealing with throughout the week. So that was definitely affecting him. But we're not seeing the same Jalen Hurts that we saw last year. Obviously, I
No.
think the switch in offensive coordinator with their OC heading over to Indianapolis to be their new head
Mhm.
coach, I think that's a big thing that the Eagles ultimately have been dealing with and trying to go through and just trying to go through that progression. But it's really interesting to see what's going to happen with the Eagles for the remaining part of the year. I believe the Eagles are officially already locked into a playoff spot. I'm not. I,
There.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
They have
no,
clinched the playoff spot.
they could lose out for the rest of the year, which is insane to think about, and
Hmm.
still be in a playoff spot. And
Though not a favorable playoff spot like that.
no,
That's a playoff spot where you've got to travel to Tampa Bay and then probably travel to Dallas again, and then you're going to have to travel to San Francisco if you manage to win each of those games.
yeah,
And so that is not favorable at all, and I don't think they would be able to survive that.
I don't think they would be able to either. It's just because that dog mentality that they had during that Super Bowl run and then the year after, I
Hmm.
don't really think that is that same team here at the moment. But moving forward, for both of our teams, it was a painful weekend. Uh,
It was, but I mean, it was for my team at least. It was what I predicted. I had a lot of people coming to me going, "I need your Steelers to win. I need your Steelers to beat the Colts," and I was like, "Guys, don't bet on them. Like it's not looking good right now. The Colts was a team where I had a feeling they would stumble, and then they dealt with some injuries early on, and they had that ejection for Demonte Casey, which was warranted to an extent. It was a bad hit, but it's getting a little unfortunate how easy it is for guys to get suspended and fined and thrown out just for, tackling a guy essentially. Like Casey had no other option for how to hit him because, you know, Gardner Minshew set him up and laid him out like that for that hit. It's
yeah,
it's
it
tough.
really was a suicide pass.
Yeah,
And
you know.
whenever I watch that, and you and I were sending, we always send reels to each other over Instagram, and you sent me one this morning where it was a Steelers player, I think it was back in 2017, talking about it,
Yeah,
and
Mike Mitchell.
I'm sitting there listening to it, I'm going, yeah, no, like I can kind of understand where this is going, but if you watch the hit, it's one of those things where you know, it felt unlikely that he could really do much, but it's one of those moments where you see a player stretched out, basically Supermaning,
Yep.
and you know that player isn't going to magically just do a front flip in the air, get back on his feet, and run. He's going to be down on the ground, so you got to be able to at least put yourself in a position of where you're either jumping over him. I know it's really, really hard in those moments, but the
Well, the
NFL for years has been teaching to try to move away from that, and that's why the call was ultimately made.
100%. It's frustrating and difficult because that situation, basically what defenders are being told is, hey, let them get the first down. The don't try and jar the ball loose. It's, hey, the the guy got to throw the pass, so you have to let him catch it now. And that's the frustrating part. It's like if that had been a clean pass and he had been upright catching that and he hit him, shoulder to chest, knocked the ball loose, it's all good. But because it was a bad pass that Michael Pittman had to lay out to try and grab, it's just unfortunate. It makes you think that if they start teaching these wide receivers dive for every catch, if you lay out for every catch, then you can't get hit. You're all you have to survive is the ground at that point. And these guys will be able to learn how to do that, and then we won't be able to see any tackling to try and knock those balls loose at that point.
Yeah,
That's what frustrates me about it. Is
it's
it
it's
just
one of those
there's no
ones where
perfect
it's
solution.
a lose lose situation because again,
It is.
you and I we both cheer we've always cheered for a defensive team, where it's
Hmm.
like, going back to the days of the '85 Bears, of where it was, we are literally trying to kill you. And then you go
Yeah.
back to that, I think it was the '09 Steelers team, where it was pretty much the same mentality for their defense, where they actively went out to try to hurt you. And I
Hmm.
remember seeing a clip where it was Mike Tomlin saying, like, that defense was the reason for the player safety initiative, where it's like, yeah.
100%.
And
It wasn't just them, but that was a real catalyst. It was them and Ray Lewis and Vontez Burfict. That whole crew of linebackers in that time frame was really the catalyst for that player safety initiative. It's
wi-
just sometimes it feels like it's being taken too far. And I understand some of the players' frustrations when they're like, we have guys making these rules now that have never touched a football.
yeah.
And that's the frustrating part. It's like, put them out on the field at least. Like, you should have played some ball at some point so you can understand what the speed of the game is like and how split second some of those decisions are made. Now,
Well,
the 3 game suspension, I don't disagree with because KZ has been a repeat offender for this player safety initiative. He's had some bad hits throughout this season alone. And so at some point, you do have to send that message to him to, hey, clean it up. I get it. You're trying to play that Steelers football. You want to throw the big hits, but throw the big clean hits because we saw some hits earlier in that game where they were big hits, but they were still clean.
mhm.
Not, I mean, there were also some other bad ones. We had that nasty horse collar that resulted in Zach Moss being out for the rest of the game. So that Steelers defense is playing frustrated. They're making some bad decisions, throwing some bad hits. It's been a rough 3 weeks, and I expect a rough 3 weeks still to come for that team.
Last
But
thing,
going over,
or
Mhm.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. All good.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know if you were done or not. But last thing I'll say about it is I completely understand the ejection during the game, because
Mhm.
the officials looking at that going like, okay, if I don't send this player out, we're gonna have chaos brewing for the rest of the game. It's kind of like a situation in hockey where a big hit happens, and it's like he's gonna go into the box for a couple minutes, come back out, and then boom, it's gonna be a line brawl. Just like, okay, you got to sit for your 2 minutes to think about what you've done, but now you actually get to reap the benefits of
Yeah.
what you did. And so I can kind of understand that situation. The refs didn't really want the game to get out of hand, so that was probably the smartest move. But yeah, tough way to end the season for your Steelers, and for my Bears, man, it was just
Yeah.
another meltdown. And like I've said a lot throughout this year that for the last 2 or 3 seasons, I've taken the emotions out of the game, where I don't get frustrated with the game. I just kind of sit back and go, yeah, okay, whatever. That game on Sunday was the most frustrating game that I have seen in a long, long time, because it's one of those things where you're watching this team and you're going, okay, they're better than what they're doing. And granted, I knew this game was going to be a dogfight from start
Mhm.
to finish. It wasn't going to be a high scoring game, it was going to be a grindy type of win. To watch them give that one up, you're just sitting back, and I was letting my emotions shine that day, where it was one of those things where I'm yelling at the TV. Haven't done that in a long time, because
Mhm.
you're just watching this. It's the Bears this year have allowed three fourth quarter comebacks where they were up by 10 or more points.
Yeah.
The
Where
odds of
where
that
they were.
happening
Yeah.
is 0.003.
Yeah. 3 separate games where they had 99% odds to win that game and they blew it.
Yep.
That is, yeah, that is probably the biggest thing that they need to fix going into next year. Because I mean, you look at their record and they're what, 5-8 now?
Yes.
Yeah, and so I mean, you take those 3 games and you're sitting at 8-5 instead, which is
Five and
a
nine. 5-9.
5-9. Okay, so you're sitting at 8-7 or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, mathing early.
We don't do math, but
eight and
yeah,
six,
it,
whatever it is. Like that's a complete turnaround because then you're like in the hunt for that wild card spot
oh,
as
not
opposed to
only are
being.
you in the hunt, but you're in the hunt to potentially try to win this division. Because
Yep.
if you take those 2 wins, or if you take that extra win against Detroit, you have now
Hmm.
two above them, and so it immediately puts you in that fight with them. So if you
Yep.
both finish the season with the same record, it's like, okay, well, this team beat this team twice, so then that puts you in a situation of where you could win the
Yep.
North. And it's one of those things where, I was saying, a week prior to, where it almost kind of feels like Eberflus is going to win this season just because, or he's going to remain the coach because he's somehow going to win enough games. I look at that and I go, that's one of those things where you kind of just need to clear out the entire coaching staff after that. You can't.
Well, it was like the Steelers last year with Matt Canada. They won out so much at the end of the year that they were like, oh, we kind of can't fire Matt Canada now.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what it was feeling like for Eberflus.
Well, I think, let's say that the Bears win out the rest of their games. They face off against the Cardinals this weekend, the Falcons the week after that, and then finally Green Bay to end the year. So that would put them at 8 wins, and so
Hmm.
that's an 8-9 season for me. With If you just look at the season, if you add those 3 wins, you could have, technically, you're supposed to have 6 more wins on the year than what you should have, and you would have had double-digit wins. And to look at that and go, oh, you know what? Yeah, that's kind of where everyone expected us to be this year, but this team feels really like the Bad News Bears, like that old baseball movie, where it's just one of
Hmm.
those things where it's so dysfunctional, but they get it done. But the problem is with this Bad News Bears is that they're so dysfunctional, they'll only occasionally get it done, and he just feels like they need a new coaching change just to come in and go, listen, we are the Bad News Bears, but we're not
Hmm.
going to be as dysfunctional, and we're still going to get it done. Because this
Yeah.
team right now
Got
is without a doubt a plus 500 team.
hmm Yeah, they got to clean it up and find a way to not blow those leads.
Yeah.
Protect that lead somehow, some way. I know you guys have struggled with some injuries at the running back position, and that does really hurt the ability to protect leads because you ultimately, when you're up by that much, you want to be running the ball, chewing the clock, and still being able to get those first downs. When you've got injuries and guys not playing at 100% in the running back position, that forces Justin Fields to, on second and long or third and medium, go out and try to make a play for that first down, and that's difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
When a team's fighting to get back into it, they're going to bring the pressure, they're going to play really tight, and that's what we've seen is ultimately these teams are just able to corral Justin Fields and not allow him to convert those third downs so that they can get the ball back and march down and score.
The other thing that I want to talk about from that game is that the Hail Mary attempt at the end of the second quarter, where he throws the ball goes through defender's hands, it hits the ground, they call it an interception. It's like, okay, it's at the end of the quarter, whatever. Not
Yeah.
not not an interception looking after it, but also that play, he throws the ball. You can do a full one Mississippi, he gets hit. Not only does he gets hit in the head area, and you're sitting
Yeah.
back going like, okay, well, where's the flag? Because if that flag gets called, well, guess what? The Bears get 15 more yards. They kick a field goal. Guess what? At the end of the game, it's tied.
Yeah.
You're sitting back just kind of looking around going like, where's the flag? Like, Justin Fields this year, do you want to know how many roughing the passer calls that he has?
How many? Zero?
He has 0. That doesn't seem statistically possible. Like, players are getting roughing the passer calls for getting breathed on too heavy. Justin
Hmm.
Fields is constantly getting hit late after the throw or when he's sliding down, and it's just like referees are just walking by going, yeah, that's fine. It's like, what the fuck does he need to do? Does he need to get on both knees and, give the,
Yeah.
treatment before each and every game just to get a goddamn call? And it's insane to think about. But we need to move over to our picks on that one, unless you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I thought you were going to mention the Hail Mary at the end of the game, the one where it literally landed in Darnell Mooney's lap while he was laying on the ground and he just couldn't hang on to it. And it up and then it was an interception and taken out and it's like, "Oh my God." Darnell Mooney could have just hung on to that. You guys win that game.
Yep, yep. But in true Bears fashion, we can't have nice things, and
Yep.
the players that we thought were good are no longer good. And the biggest thing right now, why I've been pounding the table, and I think why so many Bears fans have been pounding the table for Marvin Harrison Jr., is because I think we all deep down knew throughout most of the year that it's pretty much DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and nobody else in the
Yep.
receiving game, and we're just kind of sitting back going like, this isn't fun.
No, no, definitely need another weapon there, and that's just it. Like it, at least you guys have a very clear path of what you should be doing come this draft. You know, you need that number one wide receiver to play alongside DJ Moore. You need a running back somewhere in the mid rounds that maybe can be a steal. You need a little bit of help on the edge to relieve some of the pressure on Montez Sweat. And then from there, it's just building that offense further. And I think you guys are going to be in a great position next year. Mind you, we said that at this time last year. So,
Well, we are in a better position this year than we were last year, so
yeah,
it's technically true. The one
yeah,
last
maybe.
thing I want to say, and it's kind of funny for Montez Sweat, is that he could potentially end the regular season and break history, being the only player to lead two different teams in the exact same season in sacks, because he
Yeah,
has 6.5 sacks with the Commanders, and then traded to the Bears. Now he leads the Chicago Bears with 6 sacks, and there's still 3 games left where he's likely going to get more. So
yeah.
it's hilarious that the fact that the Commanders currently have nobody that can actually generate sack pressures, so he probably will be the first player ever to lead two different teams in sacks during the same season.
Yeah, that'll be crazy if that ends up happening for sure.
Without a doubt, needs to be the defensive player of the year if that happens.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll happen, but
It
next year maybe, man. Like if you guys get him help on the other side, he could very easily be a sack and a half per game
he's
player.
sixth in the league in sacks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I'm not taking away like he's done well. It's just there have been other guys that have been a little bit more
No. He's defensive player of the year.
now.
I don't think T.J. Watt could lead the two different teams in sacks in the same season.
Well, no, because he doesn't have to get traded away because the team's not that garbage. We're garbage right now, don't get me wrong, but we're not Commanders level garbage.
This is true. Now
Yeah.
taking a look at our Thursday night game where we have the New Orleans Saints going into Los Angeles to take on the Rams. I kind of struggled with this game a little bit because the Saints have just been such a roller coaster of a team this year. Both teams are walking in with a record of 7-7, and currently the Rams are favored by -4 points in this one in LA. So Rams are gonna have a little bit of a home field advantage, little bit, but
No, the Rams usually have fans turn out for
that
their games. It's the
you know
Chargers that don't really
you,
have a home field advantage.
you're right. They
Yeah.
do, but um, I, I'm gonna pick the Rams to win this game. I do struggle a little bit to think that they're gonna cover that 4 point spread, just because Thursday night games have been so weird this year,
Hmm.
where I honestly think the Rams will win, but they're not going to cover the spread. But the over under in this game is 46.5 points, which I kind of feel like I would prepare to take the under in that game as well.
Yeah, I'm staying away from the over under just after that Steelers Patriots one where it like both teams scored 3 times as many points as they've scored any game. It just I was like, nope, I'm done with that. Um, but yeah, like the Saints are very much roller coaster week in, week out. It's been up, down, up, down. We don't know what we're getting out of the Saints. Whereas the Rams, it's they started hot and then sort of had some injury issues and fell flat through the middle of the season, but they've been hot again here. You know, so it's they've been more on an upward trend, I feel, than the Saints have been. The Saints coming off a win against the Giants last week. Giants aren't great. I know DeVito's sort of rejuvenated them a little bit, but I'd still say they're not a great team.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I also am going to go with the Rams here. but I do think the Saints will be able to keep it close. These Thursday night games have been messy. I think we're finally in line to get a decent one again. This one will be a decent game, I think. It likely won't be as super exciting as we see on a Sunday night or, even the game of the week on Sundays. But yeah, the Saints will cover this spread, but the Rams will win.
Yeah. Now moving over to the Cincinnati Bengals going into Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Take it away, friend.
Yeah, I wasn't keen on picking the Steelers last week for obvious reasons. They haven't looked good. It looks like we're going to get another change at quarterback this week for them. Mason Rudolph, it does appear, is in line to get the start. There is a small window there where they're saying, if Kenny Pickett's feeling good enough, maybe he'll play. I don't think that's a wise decision for the coaching staff to make. I think they should just go with Mason Rudolph. At this point, like, this season can go one of two ways, really. It's win out and maybe you make the playoffs just so you can lose in the first round, or lose out and maybe you get yourself into a top 10 pick. I'm favoring the latter right now just because I'd rather have that higher pick at this point in time. That being said, this is Bengals Steelers. I always say this about AFC North divisional games, much like the NFC North is it doesn't matter if one team has 10 wins and the other has 10 losses. It's going to be tight, it's going to be gritty, it's going to be a fight, and it's hard to predict which team will win. Um I cannot in good faith pick the Bengals though. Even if I thought they were going to win, I cannot pick the Bengals to beat the Steelers. So I am going with the Steelers to win. Mason Rudolph is 3-0 in his career against the Bengals, so maybe, just maybe. And Jake Browning, while he's been hot, I have heard rumors that he's dealing with a bit of a arm shoulder just soreness, which, if TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith can get a nice big hit on him early, then maybe that just shakes him up a bit. Unfortunately, no Minka Fitzpatrick this week. DeMonte Casey is out. This defense is it's falling apart. We've got nothing up the middle in the linebacker core. The safeties, we're now running with practice squad safeties. So the Steelers are going to have to win likely a shootout if they're going to win. But I am picking the Steelers to win this game.
The spread currently is at -2 for the Bengals.
Yeah.
You're picking.
Yeah, I knew the Bengals were favored in this game,
Yeah,
but
no.
that's
So
fine.
obviously you're picking the Steelers
I'm
for this
picking the
one.
Steelers. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, these games are so interesting to say the least, and both teams are banged up here at the moment. No Jamar Chase for the Cincinnati Bengals, but they still have T. Higgins, and T. Higgins went off last week, and I right now I trust the Bengals more than I trust the Steelers because you watched Trubisky last week, wasn't great,
No.
and the situation for Mason Rudolph is he got what a quarter of playtime, probably even less than that.
Yeah, it was even less than that. So honestly, we didn't get a good read on him last week to see whether he's going to be any good with this week, which I'm still hesitant on. I said that a few weeks back. Like
Yeah,
he hasn't started a game since 2021.
yeah.
It's been a while now, but they got to make that change. Like Trubisky is
Oh,
not
he's
getting it done.
terrible.
Yeah,
And the problem is that I don't necessarily think that the Steelers are that much more confident in Mason Rudolph's ability to go out there. I think they're kind of looking at it right now as going, if Rudolph's out there, how much worse can it possibly get?
well,
Because
exactly.
it's one of those things of going like we're we're just kind of throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks.
Yeah.
And for that a reason alone, alongside with I guess not that reason alone, but for that reason and a handful of others, I gotta pick the Bengals to win this one, and I do think they're gonna cover the spread. I think that -2 is probably enough. Do I think would I call it a -4 spread? Would I take that? Probably not. I think it's probably going to be somewhere within that field goal range. But yeah, for this one, I've been saying it a lot this year. I struggle to see the Steelers' offense do much. And the only time that I've ever felt confident with the Steelers is when looking at their defense, and their defense is decimated by injuries, and they
and just exhausted. They're
exactly. Yep.
they're drained. They're at that point where they're like, we can't keep winning you guys games. You got to do something on offense,
Yep.
and that's just it. It's frustrating for the team right now because they're sitting there going, Kenny Pickett went down. We had Mitch Trubisky in there. We've got Mason Rudolph now. If we still can't win games, and you're looking across the field at Jake Browning, an undrafted guy who's sat on the bench for 4 years, and he's still able to do it with this Bengals offense, like it really shows how much Matt Canada damaged this offense in the 3 years he was there,
You know what's
and
funny
why we.
is that ever since Matt Canada left, the Steelers have immediately plummeted in terms of record. I think they're like 1-4 since he left.
I but do you really think it would have been any different if Matt
No,
Canada was still there?
no.
That's my point, and that's what I was saying when he left. Everybody was like, "Yeah, we're gonna be great again," and it's like, no, like you can't change the fundamentals of the offense this late in the season. That's the problem. They waited too long to change him. They should have fired him at the bye, at the very latest. I still wanted him gone after last season. Like
Do you guys want Luke
that's the
Getsy
problem.
instead?
Hmm?
Do you want Luke Getsy instead? You can have him.
I mean, at this point, we don't have to worry about that. Like, we can actually go out there and find somebody that can, maybe do it.
No,
Luke
you
Getsy's
can
just a
have Luke
sidestep.
Getsy. You can have Luke Getsy.
Yeah, yeah, because we really want another guy who calls screen passes on 3rd and long.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, no, thank you. But that's what the Steelers have to do this offseason is they gotta find themselves an offensive coordinator who actually understands how NFL football needs to be played,
Yes.
and then work hard this offseason, rebuild this offense, and maybe next year we can bounce back and only have 1 year of pain. I knew this had to happen eventually. We've had 2 decades of great football, always winning. At some point, this team had to stumble and have a losing season. That doesn't mean I'm going to abandon them because I'm not a fair weather fan. Like, so many people are calling for Mike Tomlin's head and saying, oh, we need to start cheering for someone else. It's like, no, man, like we had to have a losing season. You can't win every year all the time. It doesn't
This
happen. It's
isn't
not
Madden on how we play the game.
right. Exactly. It was bound to happen. I'll accept it. Like we gotta deal with it, and we need to make changes. We need better coordinator, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens come next year. But
Yes, indeed.
um,
But now moving to the final game on this Saturday slate, where we have the Buffalo Bills going into SoFi to take on the Chargers. The Bills currently favored at minus 12 points. And yeah, I'm gonna pick the Bills, and I'm gonna pick them to win on that spread just because you watched the Chargers last week against the Raiders. That
yeah,
was against the Raiders. The Bills right now, they're one of the hottest teams in the AFC. They have performed excellently the last couple of weeks. They are a force to be reckoned with, and I think the Chargers right now, even after firing their coach and firing their GM, it's just not going to be enough to go out against a team that is looking at every single game right now as a playoff game, because that's essentially what they need to do. And they could win out and still not reach the playoffs. Like, that's the
yeah,
kind of predicament that Bills are in. So if they lose a game, they are officially one of those teams that's going to be out. No, they're not going
yeah,
to be officially out, but it's going to be one of those things of going, the odds of them actually getting there are more likely of me winning $1 billion and getting every dream girl that I possibly want. Like, the odds are very similar in that department if they lose this game. And the Bills, I just don't think are going to allow this struggling Chargers team without Justin Herbert, without this and that.
hmm
And I think the Bills are just going to walk into LA and say, "Yep, we're going to take this one."
yeah, yeah. Easton Stick did not look good. We don't know if Keenan Allen's going to be back. He's still questionable. Uh, but that being said, like we got to remember who Josh Allen is. We're going to be seeing the Easton Stick version of Josh Allen on Saturday. And so I don't think it's going to be a very pleasant game to watch. I am also picking the Bills to win, but I don't think they're going to cover that spread because I expect Josh Allen to play down to the level of the quarterback he's playing against because that's what he's been doing his whole career.
The one difference that I see with that is that if you look back at the week that he had against the Cowboys,
Hmm.
the Bills didn't beat the Cowboys by Josh Allen because Josh Allen only threw the ball 15 times, had
Yep. Yeah. It
94
was.
yards and one touchdown. It was
Hmm.
solely James Cook saying, "Give me the rock, bro. I'm gonna just rush this." And the Bills put up 266 rushing yards with three rushing touchdowns on the Cowboys, and you're just going like, okay, that's all they need to do
But
in this game as well.
yeah, but again, that's the Cowboys on the road, outdoors, which we've seen the Cowboys don't perform well in that situation.
True,
And so,
but
but
this
yeah,
is
it
the
was. It
Chargers
was.
at home.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like I said, the Bills are going to win this. I don't know if they're going to be able to replicate that sort of a run game. The defense, while suspect in LA, I'm sure they're going to be looking at that and looking to stop it. And so I don't have confidence in the Bills beating that 12-point spread. I don't think they'll be able to put up that many points this week.
Fair, fair.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that is our short little pod that we're doing for the mid-game stuff. And for Sterling, I'm Brendan. We thank you all very much for hanging out with us here midweek, and we say thank you so much, and we will see you shortly.